Hello and welcome back to the PipeCat neighborhood. I've spent the last few days, well, in my spare time, messing with this guitar right here. This is the made by JSN Guitars. This is the Firefly, their sort of copy of a Gibson ES335 guitar. And it came out of the box with a lot of problems, and I immediately attacked them because I left a lot of parts out of my first video about this because some of the stuff I said seemed like I was being overly negative. Don't look at it that way. Look at it as being overly critical. Critical doesn't mean negative. And I was critiquing the way the package came and the condition the guitar showed up in for the money. Again, this guitar, cost $139 shipped from Amazon. Well, I've got Prime. They might charge you $8 to ship it. They go in and out of stock quick, and I could only get a red one. That's the only one they had. They had a blue one, but it was a lefty, which, no. But for a while there, I struggled with the problems. They were, and I'll be brief about them, they were this pickup here, the neck pickup being kind of pushed in upon arrival, and I thought it was from physical damage. So I was ready to return the guitar or claim it through UPS, because I don't think you can return these. I could be wrong. Amazon might have their own policy, but JSN's website says they don't take returns. Bear that in mind. I don't know of anyone who tried to return one yet, so I don't know what kind of problems they might run into. I don't plan on returning this now, which brings me to my point. This guitar, once rescued from the initial condition that it showed up in, is pretty nice. It's pretty nice. I got to tell you, I mean, to look at it in the sunlight now, to look at it, you can see, I'm trying to get it in the camera angles there, you can see the perfection of that finish. I mean, look at that. Look at that. I'll even get some reflections in it if I can so you can see. There aren't even any swirl marks in that. I mean, that came beautiful. Look at the back. Just as nice, you know? It's a beautiful guitar. Look at the headstock, full view. I don't know if I gave you a full view in the last video. But that's a kind of cool headstock. It's a little big, but you know the wood is light, so you don't feel it. So, again, back to what I did to rescue the guitar. This pickup had to be salvaged, and what I did was I got in and I replaced some hardware. This screw right here, use my handy-dandy screwdriver indicatorizer. This screw right here, it was junk. There was no thread on it. It was like a, let me get up here. There was no thread on this one screw. Remember, these pickups are floating pickups. They are not bolted into wood. The pickups themselves are not. It's a clever way of isolating pickups. It's a clever way of isolating magnets that are hanging basically in thin air. These 4 screws in a thin plastic frame are the only contact point of the hardware of this whole pickup in this guitar body. The pickup itself is hanging on these 2 screws, this one and this one. The pickup is hanging from those. This screw is about maybe an inch, inch and a half long, and it is screwed into this plate. At both ends of this plate, there are what they call ear flanges, little half-moon flanges that come out. They have a hole in the middle of them, and they are threaded. So what you do is you take that screw, and you put a piece of spring on it. There's a spring, a compression spring, just a little squishy spring. You put it on the screw, and then you take that screw. Well, actually, you put the screw through the plastic, then you put the spring, and then, keeping the spring in place, you screw the tip of that screw into that ear flange. Okay? And the spring is there to keep tension. So it's a compression spring that provides necessary tension to keep this pickup pushed in all the time, but only gently, floatingly. You know, if you got a suction cup and stuck it on that pickup and pulled on it, it would come out just a little bit, as far as the spring would let it. So that is suspended almost in midair, hanging by these 2 screws, And these 2 screws are only anchored to the rest of the guitar by these 4 screws. You see what I'm saying? It's clever. There is a big empty air pocket surrounding both of these pickups in this guitar. That's the way these work. Most of you guitar players will know this, but people thinking about buying a first guitar might be watching this video. And that's an interesting thing to know. So, I had to fix this screw by fixing, well, this screw was not catching the ear flap inside. It wasn't catching it. So the spring had pushed the pickup all the way inside because the ear flange was not connected to that screw. That screw was just floating. So out of the box, I had to get in there, figure out what was wrong with the ear flange. Well, what I had to do is I had to fix the threading of the hole in the ear flange. It was drilled through cheaply, luckily, because it left a big fat burr on the bottom, one that you could cut your finger on. But I took a needle nose pliers and I crushed the burr back into the hole. That provided enough quote-unquote teeth to grab that thread and make it viable again. In fact, it was pretty well seated. That side's probably better than this side, and this side is properly threaded. So that worked out well. This screw here had to be replaced because it had no threads on it. There was nothing holding it in the wood. So I just put a new one in there. The next thing that I did sequentially, not in order of importance, but in order of sequence, was once I had that on there, then I tried to set the neck up, find out how the neck was, you know. Now, mind you, I hadn't even checked these electrically at the time. I didn't even plug it in yet. But I wanted to see because if the neck isn't savable, if the neck is too warped, too bent, or anything, the rest of the guitar, don't even bother looking at it. These frets themselves are, they are installed well in the neck. But the installation was where that ended. They installed them. They did it properly. There are no air spaces. Everything is well seated, right? And they leveled them. They made them quite level, which was surprising to me. But what they didn't do was what they call crowning the frets before they finished them. Take a look at the cross section of a fret. You see? Back it off a little. You really can't. Well, I don't know. I can't get a good representation. But the cross-section of some frets is triangular, right? And the cross-section of other frets is semicircular. Depends on your preference. They make all kinds of different fret wire. That's a big spool of wire that those come off. They just cut them to fit. And then you have to bend a radius into them according to the radius of your neck surface. Anyway, these are the semicircular kind. And because they're semicircles, they figure they didn't have to crown them. They figure, well, we'll just let the top of the circle be the crown, the surface where the string touches the fret. And they installed them right and all that good stuff, but they didn't finish the surface very well. I think they just kind of put them in, and then somebody at the factory says, oh yeah, it's only going to America, just got to buff it. So they probably buffed it out shiny, and they didn't worry about the surface tooling that happened to it, the surface marks. This probably went onto a fret press that pushed them into place. That fret press probably was worn on the surface a little bit, and they put them on an arbor press and pushed them down to seat them in place. But it may have left little, almost microscopic, surface scratches, dents, whatever you want to call them, compression points. And I could see those literally right through the shine that they put on the frets. So what I had to do, I decided not to crown them. I decided not to make the cross section triangular. They make a fret crowning tool, which basically is a V-shaped upside down file that goes across the fret this way, that literally files both sides at an angle until it comes to a crown. You don't want to take any height off the fret, so you have to be very careful when you crown them that you don't take the height down, because now you'll have an uneven fret, one that's lower than the others, causing buzzing and all kinds of problems. So, rather than crown it, I said let's leave it semicircular, and let's see what happens if we simply take the machining out of it. So I started with a very, very fine sandpaper. In fact, I probably got some kicking around. Well, anyway, I started with a very fine, high grain sandpaper, almost viewable is what they call emery paper. It's for polishing, really, surfaces to a small extent, polishing them to a dull shine. And it was just enough. Mind you, I had to take painter's masking tape, the blue tape, and I had to mark all the frets. I had to, in between, to protect the wood. If indeed that is wood. I think it is. But anyway, I had to protect the inner fret from being scratched up, so I put, and plus these are nice mother of pearl inlaid kind of looking things, mother of toilet seat. But I taped it all off, and I razor cut the tape right to the edge of each fret, so only the metal was showing. And then I went nutty with my sandpaper, basically, just going to each one and looking at it, and a few hits, looking at it, getting the trouble spots, only the trouble spots, until they all looked dull shiny with no scratches in them. When they looked dull shiny with no scratches in them, then I took some number quadruple zero steel wool, which is really super fine steel wool, and then I hit them good, because that stuff takes almost no material off the fret, so you can be brave when you use it. So I went and I hit it with a good pressure all the way down the whole neck until these now were not only free of machine and tool marks, but they were shiny like mirrors, to eliminate that scratchy sound that I was getting when I first took it out of the box. If I vibrated a string, all you heard was it was ugly. Now they don't. I'm going to turn the volume off. I have the guitar plugged in right now, but I'm going to turn the volume off on the guitar. Before, when I did this, when I took it out of the box, just in open air, without even being plugged in, you could hear it going. It was awful. But now that I have properly dressed these frets, I find that they don't really need crowning. I was able to maintain the semicircular shape that they came in. So that was a good thing. That saved me, a lot of work. Crowning frets is nothing easy, because it's not the amount of effort that you put in taking the metal off. It's the amount of effort you put in restraining yourself from taking too much metal off. That's the hard part. And it saved me all that work. All I really had to do was a sand and shine on these to get them good. Now, there is one criticism that I still have. The edges, the ends of the frets, these were not what they call rolled well enough. These still have burr on them, just enough. Not enough to cut you, really, but enough to catch you moving. So if you're an experienced player, you can learn to play around that and ignore it. I'm going to go back and fix it later. But I just wanted to get the guitar where it was really playable. So that was major problem number 2. Major problem number 1 was getting that pickup in place. Number 2 was getting the frets so that they looked good and were usable. Then I went through the whole neck and I looked at its straightness. Now, I found in my first video that you couldn't see all the hand motion I was making. And me being Italian, you really need to see the hand motion. So, it's also going to need strap locks, as you can tell. The neck, when it came out of the box, the neck was really super straight. And you would think, well, it's a good thing. Normally, yeah, in some universes, that is a good thing. It proved that the neck was capable of being perfectly straight. That's a biggie. Some necks, you can adjust them all you want, but they will never be capable of being perfectly straight. This was. So that gave me encouragement. So then what I went on and did was I took a look at I looked down it and saw that it was straight, and when I played it, I found that there was a little bit of fret buzz, and that the string height was maybe a little too macho, just a little too high. So I found that I had to set it up really good before I could get it to chord cleanly, okay? So what that meant was I had to, it comes with this. This Allen wrench is for adjusting the truss rod inside this neck. The truss rod basically is just a piece of metal that can either relax and bend itself a little or tighten real hard and pull that neck perfectly straight. Allowing the strings to pull hard on the neck such that it begins to bow forward a little bit, that's called allowing relief. When you take that truss rod and put it in the end of the neck, loosen it a little bit, and it begins to bend forward, it's relaxing forward is what it's doing, letting the strings pull it. You only need to look down the length of the neck, down the straight length of the neck, and watch it to slowly just begin to just bow so that the middle of the neck looks like it's kind of sinking in just a little bit. And the top and bottom of the neck have come up a little bit. It's what it looks like visually when you're looking down. The important thing to note is that this bottom of the neck is always perfectly straight, pointed at the bridge at the bottom. Always, no matter what you do. The only way you could change that was if this was a bolt-on neck, which it's not. This is a glued-on or set neck. If it were a bolt-on neck, you could put some shims inside it to make it this way, that way. But we don't get to do that. This one is set so that the bottom is always pointed. These last few frets will always be on an absolute beeline, straight down to where the bridge is. It's the rest of the neck from there up that can move. Therefore, when the head comes forward a little bit, this never changes. It's only the top that changes. And that means that you can now adjust the heights of the strings as you like them. And you use the adjustment of the neck to put some relief in to allow the strings to come away from the frets enough, just enough, so that they don't buzz anymore. And you can adjust it up and down using the height of the bridge, which you can screw up and down, and using the truss rod to get a happy medium where the strings and the frets and the top and bottom are all as aligned as they can be for the easiest play and for the least amount of fret buzz. You're always going to get a little bit. That depends on your playing style. If you're an aggressive picker, like I kind of am at times, you can make frets buzz no matter what guitar you're playing. So a really aggressive player might want to set their string height a little bit higher than normal, making it harder to play, but easier for them, because that's their style. Me, I'm kind of halfway between a wimpy player and a hard hand. So I kind of keep them about medium. I usually go just about the factory preset is good enough for me. So, that said, I dressed the frets, I straightened out the neck, I fixed the pickups. I had to put my own strings on this thing because the ones that came with it looked like a nice set of strings. But when I began to manipulate the axe, those strings started falling apart. One of them actually unraveled at the bottom, which I showed you in the first video. It just literally just unwound itself, and the little wheel at the end, the little ball end, just fell out. I mean, what kind of string was that? I don't know. They didn't come with a brand on them, and I didn't ask. But I went and I put on a nice set of, these are Elixir 9-gauge strings. I didn't want to overtax the guitar with heavier gauge strings. So these are what you might call super light. 9.009 inches through 0.042 inches. So 9 through 42 is what these are. They're very, very light, but they still have just enough tone in them. By the way, the ones that came on it, they were 8s. The high E string that unraveled was at 0.008. It was like a spider web. So they're cheap strings, even if they were a nice brand. They were cheap strings. The cheapest of whatever brand that was. But these, anyway, these are Elixirs, and they're expensive. And I put them on most of my guitars, not all. My rockier guitars, I use Diodario sometimes. I use and GHS Boomers. I'm very fond of those. But these were Elixir 9s. So once I put the right strings on, then the next thing was to figure out this bridge here. That's not a very expensive bridge, and people don't like that bridge because it has parts in it that can vibrate, and this bridge was loaded with vibrating parts. Take a look. Oops, sorry about that. Can you see the screws on the pickup side of the bridge? Those screws, when you turn them one way or the other, they move the saddles away or up on each individual string. The thing about that is, those screws do not have to have tension on them. The saddle has the tension from the weight of the string, the tension of the string. But those screws that move the saddles, they can hang in the wind. They just, if I shook the guitar, you'd hear them go, they don't have to be tight. And on a really expensive version of this bridge, there are tensioners built into them so that they have something to keep them from rattling. This thinks it has one, but it doesn't work. It's a little piece of wire that runs underneath the heads of the bolts, of the screws. But it doesn't work. It doesn't provide the right tension. So they were buzzing all over the place. These things were, especially on the B string and the G string, it was rattling so loud that I couldn't play the guitar. So I had to isolate those. Once I isolated the vibrating screws down there, then I went about the task of setting the intonation of the string. And what that is you're giving the string its correct length. Sounds dumb, doesn't it? But these saddles adjust the length of the exposed string to be either longer or shorter. Now, the frets never change distance between each other. Never, ever. Not even a little. So if you change the length of the string that the frets are sitting under, those frets will either have more or less tonal elevation as you move up the neck. In other words, each fret does more the shorter the string is. The longer the string is, you take the string and make it longer, the frets, as you move up them, do less mathematically to shorten the string. You have to find the perfect spot where the halfway mark of the string, the halfway mark is the 12th fret. They usually designate that by having one fret with a couple bare in front of it, a couple bare behind it. You see how these go? Every other one, every other one, every other. Then you skip two and you come to that one. That's your 12th fret, and that's the middle of your string. The middle of the string should be right, theoretically, right over that 12th fret, you would think, but because the string is sitting up in the air a little bit, when you push down on it to fret it, you're making the string tighter, raising the tone up. So, when you push down, sometimes pushing down, you hear a higher note. Like, oh, that doesn't sound right. When I hit my nice intonation, that's great. But when I fret them, don't pay attention to the tone because I've already fixed this one. When you fret them, sometimes it sounds a little too high. Oh, no, they go sharp when I push them. Oh, what good is that? Well, that's when these things come into play. Your little bridge saddles. And you take the screw and you get in there, you take the screwdriver, and you move the bridge saddle. If this goes sharp when you fret it, your string is too short. So you take that screwdriver in there and you move that saddle away and you make the string a little bit longer. And now that fretting has less power. So when you push down on it or intonate it like that, it stays the same note. So you have to find that happy balance. You don't want to make the string too long for your frets or too short for them. Wherever you set the string height will dictate how much you have to make the string longer or shorter. It's pretty complicated once you get down and start doing it. Sounds simple, but when you start doing it, you find you have to play with it because once you adjust one aspect, another aspect goes slightly out. And you will go back and forth all day until you find a rough medium where they're all kind of okay. It's almost impossible to have it perfect. But don't forget, playing guitar is never a perfect science. It is an imprecise science. When you play guitar and you're pounding on them strings, are you really caring how much you're stretching them? No, in fact, you kind of want to, a little bit. You know, you're stretching them or you're fretting them down and pulling it forward to make it sound a little bit flat even. Some guys do that. Some guys do that with their vibrato. Instead of going side to side to give it tension, they go back and forth, which is harder to do. But some guys prefer it. I know a few. So playing guitar, the way you play it, almost renders that kind of mathematical precision that we were just talking about a moot point. You want it to be as close as possible. You're never going to be perfect. Unless you could play robot guitar like a perfect machine. Unless you can play absolutely straight. And some guys almost can. You know some of them probably. But now, for the most part, for the rest of the world, guitar is a human instrument. When you play it, you're going to stretch it. You're going to do all kinds of crazy things. Guys take the neck and bend it trying to get it to, because they don't have a whammy bar. Don't do that. Anyway, so I went through all that stuff. And then I decided to worry about the electronics, the electrical, the wiring, the pickups. Well, luckily, all of that stuff came correctly done. The pickups sounded fine. They had plenty of output. I had to adjust their height according to the string, which you will play with if you ever buy one of these things. Any guitar, basically. You don't want to have the pickup too close to the string because the magnet of the pickup will sharpen the string by pulling on it. You want to have just close enough to give it the most output. Some guys like to keep it far away for the least output because they want their amp to do all the work. And, you know, there's a lot to be said for doing that. But I like it to be pretty close, so I moved them around a little bit. The toggle switch works just fine. The selector switch between the two and a mix of the two, that works just fine. The pots, well, they're inexpensive pots. The potentiometers behind these knobs, they are what they call, they're logarithmic. And that means that from 0 position to maybe 2 or 3 position, there's a big jump in the tone or the volume power. But from the 3 position all the way up to the 10, there's very little. They are logarithmic. Picture, if you know mathematics at all, you know, a logarithm is almost, trying to picture like an asymptotic graph. I don't know, I'm not going to go there. But in other words, there's more bang for the buck close to 0 with these than there is closer to 10. But you see, that's kind of a good thing, because if you're going for a drastic change, you know to just drop down to about 3, and then you can just go from 3 to 0, up and down for a drastic change when you want to do it on purpose. And then when you want a more controllable change, you know to be somewhere over 3, so that it's a little less of a change as you go up and down. If you want to just take the edge off a tone, or take the, a little bit of the bite off the volume, just a hair, you can roll it back with some ease from 10 to maybe 7 without losing much at all. So I'm leaving the cheapies on there, and these knobs are actually pretty good. Those aren't bad. Those are the same knobs you would buy if you were going to, soup up your Les Paul or something. And this switch seemed adequate enough. It's a pretty substantial switch. It doesn't feel cheap. It's not bad. So that's what I spent my time doing. So at this point, I still have to put the truss rod cover back on the head, but other than that, this morning I think I got this guitar to where it's as playable as it's ever going to be, and I think it sounds pretty good. So I've been messing with it a little bit. I don't know how in tune it is right now. G's a little flat. Oh, and the tuning pegs are really powerful on this guitar. The ratio between them is too low. In other words, it's too close to just turning the screw to adjust the flange, because you get more bang for the buck than you want when you turn it just a little bit, so they're hard to adjust. The more expensive ones, you have to turn it more with lower gear ratio. You get more control that way, and it stays in tune better. But these are okay. So anyway, here's a little bit of what it can kind of do. Now, I'm not the best player in the world, but this is with all the knobs up in the middle position. Now, if I put it in the bridge position, which is kind of your rock position, it's thinner and bitier and what they call hotter. If I put it in the neck position, it's fatter, it's boomier, it's a little more jazzy. Nice recording. I kind of like it in the middle. And I'll roll the tone off a little bit. not too much. Watch this. Here I am in the neck position, right? With the tone all the way up at 10, all right? And the volume all the way up, right? See how little change there is? Then all of a sudden, it goes from this to that. Right around pot position 2. You hear that? Then from 3 up, very little change. See what I'm saying? Logarithmic. So I'll take that, put it in the middle. Now the tones adjust both pickups while in the middle position. So you can adjust the tone of the one and the tone of the other. If you want more of this pickup to come through, leave its tone a little bit higher and turn that tone down. You know, mess with it that way. I like to keep both of them just rolled off a hair. So right around there. I don't play positions well with my fingers, so. But anyway, that's kind of the voice I use most often. It's a little thin, it's a little chirpy. It's not as bright as the bridge position by itself, and it's not as boomy as the neck position by itself. So I just kind of keep it there somewhere for most of my stuff. Sounds like it's running out of tuning. I'm standing by an open window here, sitting by an open window, and there's a cold breeze coming through, actually. Always the G string, because I tend to stretch that one the most. I should laugh, but I cry. Because your love has passed me by. You took me by surprise. I didn't realize I was waiting. See, it's kind of a general all around, you know, whatever. So it still bites through without being too obnoxious. Now, a lot of you guys are saying, but what about rock and roll, man? What if I want to rock on it? Okay, well, let's turn the distortion channel on and see what we get. Switch over to lead channel, if I can find it. All right. Lead channel, neck pickup, tone wide open. Me trying to do Steve Lukather. Hit one. So it can rock. That's my PV Classic 5212 right there, and I'm only using the channels built into the amp. I'm not using a patch pedal of any kind. So distortion with the neck pickup on, which some guys like. So I mean, it's got some stuff. once you've done a little bit of work on it, you can turn a $139 guitar into something that might be worth a couple of $100, you know. But if it works right for you, then it's priceless, and that's the important part. So I would recommend that guitar if you either are or have access to a guitar technician who can set it up for you, who can go through it and make sure the hardware is all good. Look at the little hardware. It was the little stuff. It was the little nickel and dime stuff that was killer on that guitar. The little bolts and screws and springs and and even the strings that came on it. So have a set of strings ready. Take a good look at the frets when they come. Make sure that they don't have any surface corrosion or lines or tool marks or anything like that. Make sure they're not rough, because they will come already buffed and look shiny and will fool you. But get some quadruple zero steel wool. Okay, get some of that. You can order it, and some places you can buy it, like in a hardware store. But I generally have to order it. It comes from China most of the time, like the guitar did. But a little bit of light sanding on those frets, and don't forget to protect the wood with masking tape first. Excuse me. But a little bit of light sanding, followed by a good hard buff with that steel wool, will produce mirror shiny steel frets. And they're good. But also be careful of the fret ends. They may need to be rolled off, and that takes a special tool to do. That's not easy to do because you're liable to chew up your binding trying to sand that down. There are tools that do it. If you can live with it the way it is, then live with it. It's kind of what I'm going to do, I think. If I ever address it, it'll be later on when I dig out my guitar tools. But it is a good bang for the buck. I have not used it in a live situation. At home, I find that it's a bit hot, so I expect that it's going to feedback kind of loudly when I get it in a live situation. So I'll probably use it as a backup guitar when I play live, or I may just use it at home always. You know, there's no reason not to. I have plenty of guitars for the other purposes. But as an experiment, I might bring this one with me at the next gig and see what happens. Maybe at sound check, I'll mess with it at top volume, see what happens. But I mean, it's a nice guitar. It feels good. Once you set it up right, it's very easy to play. I'll give it that. It's light. It doesn't have a lot of substance. So if you pick up your Gibson Les Paul for an hour and then put it down and pick up that thing, it's going to feel like a featherweight in your hand. But that's how 335s are. You know, you need a light touch to play a 335 type guitar. So if you bring your light touch with you, check the pickups, check the hardware, check the frets, check the neck, check the bridge saddles, check the height, check the intonation. See all that? Each one of those things is going to take you a while to mess with. And when you've done them all, you got to go back and make sure that they all work together. Good luck. So I'm going to leave that right there. This video has gone on way too long. Thank you for tuning in. If you do purchase a JSN Firefly semi-hollow body guitar, enjoy it and leave your comments about it under my video here. And thank you again for tuning in to the PipeCat channel. Come back for more stuff about pipes and tobaccos too. Oh, and Bigfoot.